Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here with my 2002 Acura RL. In today's episode we will be replacing the transmission mount on this vehicle. This is a habitual problem on these going all the way back to the Acura Legend in 1991. So from 1991 to about 2004, these vehicles had this problem. Hence the reason I'm making this video. I'm sure it will be popular with you Acura owners. Here's the part in question. On these later models, it is an updated part like this one. On the older Legends, it looks a little bit different, but the procedures are very similar for both vehicles. So if you have an Acura Legend or if you have an Acura RL like I'm working on here, this information will be useful to you. Let's get started. Our transmission mount lives here, above the exhaust and underneath this heat shield. The bulk of what we're doing today is dropping down the exhaust and removing that heat shield I just showed you. It's not likely, especially if you live in the Rust Belt like I do, that you're going to be able to get the fasteners for the catalytic converter loose without a torch. So before you even get started, I strongly suggest you get yourself a torch or some means to remove those fasteners if they're rusty. So you might be asking yourself, hey Eric, how do I know if I've got a bad transmission mount? Well, if you have one of these vehicles, and as I said, dating all the way back to 1991 with the Acura Legend, and you shift from reverse to drive or drive to reverse, and you feel sort of a shake or a shimmy underneath the center console, or better yet, if you're taking a tight turn and you hear some strange noises in the console area, there's a real good possibility that you're dealing with a broken transmission mount. Later model RLs like this have an O2 sensor going into the catalytic converter. Since we'll be dropping this down, we do not want to risk damaging it. So I'm going to take the shielding down so that there's plenty of wire to allow this to hang down while we work. Do 10 millimeters. We just take the shield down. That gives us just a little more, just enough wire to play with really. This is what you needed the heat for. These fasteners with the spring bolts that hold on the catalytic converter, there's one here, and there's another that holds a bracket up in the front. I take all three loose. You really only need the two spring bolts. But sometimes this bracket is actually broken at the top and you don't have to worry about this third one. But you do need to do this one and this one for the spring bolts. I'm going to heat them up, and then my weapon of choice is going to be this 3/8 impact with this swivel 10 millimeter. I'm going to come above the pipe like so and get on the fastener that way. I found that to be the easiest way to get in here to get to that. And then this one is not so difficult. Just come in like this. And I'll be holding the other with a 14 on the backside here like that. I'm going to start with this one. But really, we just need these two fasteners. We just need this one and this one. They start out as 12. Who knows what they end up as after a few years of rust. That's the hardest one. The other one, a little bit easier. Don't touch that, it's hot, okay? It's hot, don't touch it. It's fun to do that. Hard part's kind of over at this point. I mean, if you can get past that part, this job is pretty much done. Now we need to drop this catalytic converter and this exhaust down. I brought out my support to support it because I'm going to take the hangers loose back here. So I'm going to remove both of these hangers so this thing can drop down even more. I'm going to use a little bit of penetrating oil to knock these off of their perches. Makes it a little bit easier. With that loose, I can drop the exhaust down onto my support. If you're on the ground, you can use a jack stand or a floor jack or something. But it's a good idea to support it. Be careful not to overextend this wire. We now need to drop this heat shield down. Now there are two fasteners up here that you do not need to remove. You do, however, need to remove this one, and there's one up in the center here. There's one on this side, one on this side, and you don't need to take these all the way out, but you need to loosen these. I highly recommend the use of an impact to remove these fasteners. Once they get rusty, they come out a lot easier with an impact. They're 10 millimeter, by the way. As I said, for these, you just need to loosen them. Now that you've got the heat shield loose, pull it forward a little bit off those rear fasteners. Slide it right out. And if you throw it on the ground just right, it makes a really loud noise. Here's our transmission mount. It lives right up here above this brace. Now the older ones, the Legends, had a different type of brace underneath here and a slightly different configuration on the mount, but the process is the same getting to this point. It's just a matter of what style you have. There's a 10 millimeter that holds the shift cable onto the back here. You may have a 12 if you have an older model. The rest of these fasteners are all 14s. Remove all of those next. First the 10. And now the 14s. I'm going to take the ones under the mount out first. Need a stronger impact. Or, to lose the extension, now you can truly see how bad this transmission mount is. It's completely obliterated. Before I go further, there's a 17 millimeter through bolt up in here that I like to loosen because it's on there pretty tight. So I just get that started now. That makes it easier to remove later. Now I've done that, there's 3 17 millimeter fasteners on the back of the transmission that need to be removed. I'm gonna have to knock those loose first also. Know that after you remove the last one, it's all coming out. Now we can take the through bolt out. You can see why I loosened it first. And with that removed, we can get a better look at the damage, which this is not uncommon. This is what you'll see. And when they get this bad, this is when you start to hear it getting weird on turns. Here's our new part, which is actually slightly different. I'm starting to wonder if this is the correct part, because it's not. It's got a slightly different mounting. Oh no. Through the magic of editing, a new part suddenly appears. There's the part number. That part number is specific to this vehicle. Apparently there's variations in these mounts. The problem is the same no matter which mount is used, but as you saw previously, this one is slightly different than the one I had. And I've already checked to see, before I even took it out, if it had the same mounting points, and it does. With that, it's been a minute since I was here. I need to figure out which way this goes up in the car because we want to get this started going together before we put it in there. So let's go there, shall we? The brace that the mount sits on goes in there like this. It looks like I need to switch this around like that. Yeah, so all the holes and everything line up. So it needs to go in there like this. This mounts to the back of the transmission like that. Conclusion, bolt goes through like this. I often do this with these bolts. A little bit of oil on the threads. This, you don't want to run down all the way. I'm just going to take this down to the point where it's snug, and this still moves. We want to make sure that all this stuff is fastened down before we tighten this all the way. And I just noticed something interesting on this one. It's got these sort of pivots. They did that for a reason, and I'm not sure why. But that's a strange piece of machining that I have not seen before. Still a little bit of movement. I noticed something else during the course of this replacement. First of all, you may notice that I have swapped my transmission jack for this bungee cord, which does the same thing as the transmission jack did, and my wire is not stressed at all. However, I did notice that the transmission dropped down with this one. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. You need to support the transmission. You can use a floor jack if you're on the ground. I'm going to use that same jack that I was holding this up with. Important part is to put a wood block in between the two so you don't damage the surface. Wood block. Now we can put this pretty much anywhere we want. We won't put our fasteners into a bind when we install them. That's important. We don't want to cross thread anything here. That would be bad. I'm going to start with putting this on the back of the transmission with these 3 fasteners. These 3 17mm head fasteners, the ones that go here. And remember I said I wanted to possibly take this brace off? Well, one of these fasteners actually holds part of this brace on. So if this gets slightly out of alignment for whatever reason, it can make it difficult to install the fastener. So if it is, then you got to see what you can do to try to loosen that fastener up on the exhaust or move the exhaust around. You'll figure it out. I just realized I'm upside down. So I just tried to install this on the car and figured out that this is upside down. It's supposed to be in this orientation, but it's supposed to go on there like this. I had it backwards. All my fault. Didn't mean to lead you astray, but because I did it, you don't have to. There we go. Now it should install. With these fasteners, before I put them in the back of the transmission, same thing, just a little bit of oil on the threads, just a little bit. Let's try this again, shall we? Hey, that looks better. Seems like it'll make sense now. I am not going to tighten these yet. I'm first going to come in with this and fasten it down. And I will also be adding a little bit of oil to these fasteners. This only goes on one way. You can see how it's kind of stepped, like one is higher than the other here. Well, it's also stepped up against here where one is higher than the other. So it only goes on one way. If you have difficulty, you can jack up your floor jack, or in my case, the transmission jack, to try to get it into a better position. So far, I seem to be doing okay. Maybe up a little bit. Now, I can run the fasteners into the bottom of the mount. I just like to do this, in particular with fasteners that are steel that go into aluminum. Just found it to be a good practice. And now, we'll tighten these fasteners. I will start with the ones on the back of the transmission, these 17mm here. And then I'm going to do these underneath the brace, and lastly, the ones on the mount itself. There go my socket. Now the 14s. And lastly, now we can release the tension. It's in there nicely. It's very happy. Before you put everything back together, including the shift cable, remember, we left the through bolt loose. Now is the time to tighten it when it's in place, the weight is on it. And I just use a long wrench. Now we can do our shift cable and finish the installation. It's just that one 10mm fastener. that you may remember from before. The very loud exhaust shield. As you can see, those fasteners in the back, the reason why I said you don't take them all the way out is because they're slotted. This will help with reinstallation because you can just slide it up on there, put a couple fasteners in to hold it in place. Makes it easy. Grab a couple of those now. And because I've installed the bungee cord up here, I'm gonna have to sneak past it. I like to start with this middle one because it holds everything in place. You definitely want to put this back in there. This catalytic converter gets hot. Subsequently, the inside of the car will get hot because underneath this is the inside of the car. And you don't want to cook your new transmission mount. Finding putting this in this deep well socket is helping significantly for starting these bolts. Tighten them down. Now to aid in installation, once again, penetrating oil in the rubber hangers, and then I can lift the exhaust back up into place and hook those back up. Get my bungee cord back. Now I want to reinstall our spring bolts. If you remember, the old nuts were all rusty and I had to dispose of them, so I got some new ones. They're not new. I got them out of my used nut pile. And they will function a lot better than the old rusty ones. So here's the trick. Spring bolts. You got to get them through the exhaust and then through here and then somehow thread them on, and that's a lot of spring tension you're trying to hold back. I like to employ a pair of channel locks, or in this case, Knipex pliers. Knipex, I'm supposed to say the K. And this way I can sort of squeeze and hold. There you go again, get your mind out of the gutter. Install the nut, and we're ready to tighten. This side, I can't quite get my pliers up in there, but I can get this pry bar. And this is one of the reasons I did the other side first. Also, I forgot, but sometimes I put a little bit of oil on these threads as well. Now I can just run these down. Gotta get this guy back into place. Goes in there something like this. Excellent. So if you have an Acura RL or an Acura Legend or a Honda Legend, and you have this problem where when you go from reverse to drive or drive to reverse, there's a clunking or thump noise, or it just feels kind of funny, or sometimes when you take turns you might hear a rubbing noise or something like that in the center console area, it's very possible that this transmission mount is your problem. As I said, it's super common on these vehicles. Hardest part is getting that exhaust loose. Strongly recommend having a torch handy. That makes all the difference. Once you drop the exhaust, it's actually fairly easy. Now, can you see these or diagnose them before you go through the trouble of taking all that down? Yeah, it's kind of hard. Sometimes you can get in there and sometimes you can see them, but not often. You're gonna have to drop stuff down to get a look at it. But I can tell you, common problem. So, if you have this problem with a broken transmission mount, this video should help you. I'll put links in the description to anything that also might be helpful that pertains to this information, videos, other stuff. I'm also going to put a link in the description to EricTheCarGuy.com, which is where I ask you go if you have additional automotive questions. Google+, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, if you wish to connect with me socially. Post repair videos on Friday, so stop back and see me then. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I will see you next time.